see everyone. Thank you for having us. I'm Grant Parker. I'm the president of Flashtalking, and I'm joined by...
Greg Mulligan. I'm a senior director of media operations at FanDuel.
So our topic today, which we're going to walk you through, is all about going from impressions to impact. So let's just for a second pause on those words. We often think about impressions in the context of media weight, and it's a metric that's counted in the millions. But at the end of the day, every impression is actually designed to have an impact on a consumer, leave them with a feeling or an emotion, or even drive them to take action. And that is often driven by, or really largely driven by, the creative message. What are we actually saying to them? And that's counted in the ones, right? Each person has an individual impression that we give them that we're hoping leads to business impact. And so the goal of this session is really give you some practical advice on technology and approaches that can drive those impressions to be meaningful to consumers and to lead to business impact. And we're going to talk about how Flashtalking does that and how FanDuel is using that technology today. So there's three shifts that are kind of going on in the background here that kind of color the rest of this conversation and make this even more challenging to do what I just described. The first is channel fragmentation. We all feel this as consumers as we're switching between screens and devices. We see it as marketers in the data that we try and stitch together to make a holistic picture. Following that, there's also a loss of signal, right, where consumers are harder to find, whether you're trying to use person-level data or mapping to households when people are watching CTV, when you're talking about consumers now using iOS and Safari, where there's just less signal, that's only going to get worse. And then lastly, we have the rise of AI. And I think we went from eye-rolling to head-nodding sometime in the last year. And based on the conversations I've heard this morning, maybe jaw-dropping is the next phase of this. And so it's certainly something that we have to pay attention to, and we're still all really trying to understand what does that actually mean. When I think about AI's practical applications today, there's kind of three. One is generation, right? I want to create new things, whether that's imagery, content, words. There's insight mining. I have really large sets of data. I can get insights much faster that are practically applicable to my business. And then the third is workflow automation, right? There's many repetitive tasks that can be automated. And so those are kind of three different categories that are practically applicable for AI. So when we think about impressions to impact, creative has been recognized by marketers, and this is data from Nielsen on the bar graph, that shows that creative is actually the biggest driver of media success. More than reach, more than the brand itself, targeting frequency or context. We did our own survey of 1,000 marketers where creative had a 65% impact on business outcomes, bidding had a 16%, and audiences had a 19%. So marketers recognize that creative is super important. And if you think about where we invest most of our time, especially technology-wise, it's been around media, right? How can I squeeze more out of the media dollar? How can I get more out of a better bidding algorithm, a better media strategy? When we invest in creative, it actually has a bigger impact. And when we invest in both together, it has the most impact. And when you think about balancing those two investments and thinking about them more holistically, you get things like the ability to truly differentiate your message between impressions, to maintain enough content velocity that you're no longer leading to creative fatigue or that over-frequency feeling that people often get. You're starting to optimize more meaningfully, right? It's not just about the placement. It's also about what are we saying in that moment to that person. And that really means showing content that matters, making every impression relevant to the consumer, and ultimately connecting the brand to the right audience. If you think about the media world, that's really the only place that consumers naturally experience a brand when they're consuming media. And the brand message itself really lives in the creative. And yet the same survey showed that 85% of marketers feel like there's a major gap between creative and media. And we often think about those as separate silos and distinct executions that need to happen, completely apart from each other. So what's the solution? Really, I think it's a combination of people, process, and technology that leads to creative orchestration and relevance in the media environment. So that's what Flashtalking is focused on, and it's what we do with FanDuel today. So let me break that down a little bit so you guys understand what we mean by orchestration and relevance. So you have these pillars of creative, media, and analytics that all need to work together. Orchestration is all about getting your content in market quickly by making sure that creative production is happening at velocity. It's connected to technology that delivers that in an omni-channel way to every channel that a consumer experiences, that you're able to have delivery be sequential, that you understand how a consumer is experiencing that, and then you're able to measure the outcome. And so you need technology that does all these things holistically. Produce the creative, deliver it into the media environment, and make sure that you're measuring outcomes. On the relevance side, again, you have these three pillars of creative, media, and analytics. It's all about variation, right? Making sure that you have the right difference in your creative. And I thought, some of the comments from the previous session really spoke to this. It's not just about having lots of ads. It's about having variance in those content pieces that speak to different personas, different moments, and different contexts. And then you need technology that can actually decision that. Otherwise, you end up with thousands or millions of ads and a very messy media plan. And so being able to have a decisioning engine that can actually determine what is the persona, context, and moment that I need to address at the time of the impression, and then how can I use those signals to actually optimize in real time to get smarter and deliver more business results over time and better experience for the consumers. So when you put them together, you get the ultimate kind of solution for how do I bridge the gap between creative and media. I need to be able to have orchestration of my creative into the media environment, and then I need to make sure that every impression is relevant to the consumer, and then I understand how to do that at scale. And we're seeing tremendous results, whether that's time savings, being able to produce ads more quickly with greater efficiency, being able to get to market faster, and then impressions to impact means actually impacting the ROI of the media investment. So we're seeing that both with KPIs that are being auto-optimized, as well as whether it's brick and mortar or online stores, increasing the action consumers actually take from those impressions when they're relevant to them. So to make this even more practical and specific, I'm going to turn it over to Greg, who's going to talk about how FanDuel is using this technology.
Yeah, for those that don't know, FanDuel is a gaming company. We've got several different products, including a sports book, daily fantasy draft sports, casino product, and others, both on app and web. Our industry is a regulated one with state-specific rules and regulations around our messaging and marketing. We frequently have changing offers. Sometimes, offers are coming in and out on a weekly basis, and we've got to turn that around quickly. And we've got a customer base with a lot of varied interests. All this requires, from an operational perspective, those two things that Grant pointed out. We need an agile and fast creative orchestration and trafficking process. But we also need to really hit on relevancy. It's vital that we've got up-to-date and accurate copy and creative in market. So, this requires, all this also requires that it be done, with essentially in concert with 3 or 4 different teams, right? You've got the creative team, ad operations team, media buying team, you've got the publisher. There's a lot of touch points in that process. One of the first things we did was we had a challenge around how do we take and tailor our state-level legal copy that we're required to put on creatives and tailor that essentially to the geographical location that we're showing the ad. If we didn't have a way to do that, we'd have to essentially amalgamate all of the text that we're required to show for all states and place it within the creative. This would probably take up, I don't know, maybe like 3/4 of the entire creative. So obviously not a good way to message our consumers, and it just kind of drowns out all that important regulatory and responsible gaming messaging. What we did was essentially use Flashtalking's geo-based targeting tools to help us tailor that. So only specific, state-specific legal text is being shown in that relevant state. We've got an example there of 3 different T's and C's for, 3 different states' creatives. And then we kind of took that as the first step, but then thought, okay, well, how can we speak to consumers that have different favorite teams, they're interested in different games, and tailor that geographically. I'll point to like the bottom right example of here we have our Buffalo Bill, the showing of a Buffalo Bills versus Minnesota Vikings game. That's tailored to the Buffalo area with us displaying the logo of those, the home team and their competitor for that week. And then also below it are the live odds of that game. And these are things that are updated in real time. Now, this is just one example, though. We've got, a dozen or so other tailored creatives within the other local team games. And that's also fed by an API that is FanDuel generated that Flashtalking taps into to be able to really essentially seamlessly feed in those live odds. What else? We built upon that, and so, okay, we can swap in odds, we can swap in, team logos. What else can we make dynamic and of light touch for our creative team and essentially streamline the operational workflow? One big thing was also the offer. Like I mentioned, that's got to be swapped in and out just very frequently. That changes. And also, we've got things like the call to action. So all of these are simply elements that can essentially be adjusted on the fly without having to restart the entire trafficking workflow. I'd note that, and I'm sure a lot of creative teams will know this, if you work with HTML5, this makes it much easier to do that instead of having to kind of readjust and retraffic the entire creative. Flashtalking makes it very easy for us to make a small change and then distribute it within the ad server. And what does that mean is, like, we basically started with just wanting to geographically adjust our disclaimers, but it really opened up the creativity of the organization and our creative team to be able to create a lot of different iterations that don't look, let's say, kind of like in the box. It doesn't look very templatized. It really allows them to try a lot of new things, a lot of different ways to get our offer and messaging and speak to our customer. So I don't want to bore us with a little too much of the technical stuff and how this works operationally. But like I mentioned, there's a lot of different teams that are involved when you're trying to get that great creative concept into market. One thing Flashtalking allows us to do is essentially create a media placement for a publisher, which is, for those that probably aren't in the media space, it's just kind of like a block of code, if you will, that you send them that points to the creative. But we were able to create that without any specific creative tied to it. And we send that to them to then publish and get live and market. But behind that, there's a decision tree that powers what specific version of the creative is going to be shown. And it's here where we set up on the right there in that decision tree those rules about, okay, in this geo, we're going to send, Buffalo versus Vikings specific odds and, the New York disclaimer. This is where we make sure that we've got the right message, speaking to the right consumer. And it also allows us to remove a lot of those touch points where errors can occur. Oh, we created the creative, but it wasn't trafficked or given to the publisher, so they're running with old creatives. No, this is kind of an easy swap in the back end without, essentially the publisher having to do anything new. So I'm a little short on time, but I think, to summarize, there's a ton of time saving and de-risking that occurs. It also drives business outcomes for us. It's really speaking to what I think everyone's been talking about here, is to get away from kind of the day-to-day operations and allow us all to think creatively and strategically. So I'll hand it back to Grant for some last key points. Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, I mean, the results have been amazing. You've been an amazing partner and a great client to Flash Talking. And, hopefully what you took away from this is, there's a lot of big talk about AI. I thought the first two presentations were fascinating. I thought, what the gentleman from VML had to say was inspiring. And then was like, what do we do today that we can actually apply to our business that's very readily available for us to take advantage of some of the technology that simplifies our workflows and allows us to be more creative and drive more of an impact with our impressions. And so the three takeaways for you all would be, number one, more relevant ads are better for consumers. We're all consumers, right? We've all had the experience of a wasted impression in our life. And as my children who aren't used to very many ads start to look at me and say, why am I getting interrupted with these ads? I said, well, what if they were for Legos, or what if they were for dinosaurs? You would probably love those ads. And they're like, yeah, totally. That's exactly what we're going for here. We need ads to be relevant to consumers. When you do that, your media ROI goes up, right? Your media ROI is really driven largely by the creative message. So you have to think about creative and media together. It cannot be a separate practice or separate silos. And there's great technology along with great people in this room and process that can be put in place to really drive that change and bring creative and media together. Thank you guys very much. Appreciate everyone's time.